responders.
Right off into the deep.
You mean
Yeah.
about sometimes having the power of life or death over people?
Yeah, but
and how
what's that one word that
psychopath?
you called them? No, I'm just kidding.
no.
No, I'm just playing. No, we were looking up a list of the top 10 jobs for psychopaths, and first responders was on there. Let's see, lawyers, police, CEOs. What else did we say?
Surgeons was on my list.
CEOs, corporate executive, surgeon, investment banker, hedge fund manager, politician, police officer, military, sales, journalist, and emergency responder. And then I've looked at some lists that also included clergy. So
yeah, mine had at the bottom of the list, but it still made the list. Media personality / entertainers.
it says entertainers too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I saw media on one of them too. But what I was telling Chris, and I'm not a psychopath, although having to say you're not a psychopath is like, but it's funny that I have done.
Has someone ever accused you of being a psychopath?
I have done a few of these. I've never wanted to be a surgeon. I've thought about studying law, but I've been in corrections. I've been in the military. I've done sales. I've done media. So yeah, it's kind of funny.
I don't know. We might be reaching saturation with lawyers right now. I don't know. I know we need some health professionals going into the field, so we'll have people to take care of people. But
yeah,
I think we're about maxed out on lawyers right now.
Yeah, the medical thing, I definitely disagree with somewhat. Although, and I'm not bashing surgeons, we need surgeons, but I can sort of see, I think, why surgeons would be mentioned, because you sort of have to be, or at least most surgeons that I've seen that are good surgeons are like a little bit arrogant.
Well, some have, what they call the God complex.
Yeah.
Yep. Now, and correct me if I'm wrong, psychopaths, although they may not think they're God, they like to control you like they are.
Yeah, that's true. They definitely like to be in control and like to hide away from criticism and so on and so forth. Speaking of psychopath, no, I'm just no, they're not psychopaths. But another topic that we were talking about was, I don't know why I keep forgetting their name. Well, let's just say a particular megachurch. I don't know if we should share their name or not, but we mentioned that there's a church. Chris, how long have you known about this particular church, or like how long have you been watching their stuff?
I've known about the pastor in that church for 10 years.
You know him personally?
No.
Oh, okay.
I know a guy that went to the church and was a member of the band there.
Oh, okay.
But
did you ever ask him like what it was like being there, or what he thought about
it? To be a member of the band, you have to sign a non-disclosure.
Huh. I wonder why that would be.
Because they don't want you knowing what goes on behind the scenes there.
Yeah. Yeah,
I mean, even as a member of the band.
Huh. I don't know what, as a band member, what it is that you would have to hide, except for culture.
Which makes me suspicious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess that means that they don't want people to see the behind the scenes culture. I don't know.
And why would that be a problem at a church?
Yeah, because you're not supposed to. Deception is not supposed to be the way of.
Did you know? Jesus made the apostles sign a non-disclosure.
Yeah.
He's gonna be really mad when he finds out about the Bible.
Yeah.
Well, that's a problem that we have to start doing a better job of solving, is being biblical,
But why did we bring up this particular church?
Yeah, they also, I believe you found out that they have $200 million stock portfolio?
It says the story actually said between 2 and 300 million. So
Okay.
somewhere, give or take 100 million.
Yeah. Yeah. No big deal. Now, I'm sure Chris and I both have our own thoughts on this. I know that obviously we're a financial podcast, so we talk about money pretty frequently, but as we've said before, it can be a pretty dangerous topic and dangerous thing if if you're not chasing after Christ all the time. The minute that you stop involving Christ is usually when things go really wrong. My opinion, I don't necessarily see anything wrong with a church managing a decent amount of money, but that money has to be, another thing we talk about a lot is stewardship. So it's important that money be stewarded responsibly, if that's even a word. But what are your thoughts on them having
the former church that I came from, was a little bit farther along than our plant is right now. And we had a significant amount of money more to deal with than we do right now. But I was a member of that board as well. And we did have a separate fund that we had just strictly dealing with building fund. And we did have that in a CD. Now we didn't have it invested, but we just had it in a CD.
Yeah.
And that was just to keep it separate from the rest of the money, saying this money is set aside strictly for building purposes.
Like fixes and repairs and that sort of thing.
Or expanding if we needed to build a new building or if we wanted to do this, that, whatever, but that was what it was set aside for.
Do you think that's the way to go to kind of break it out like that?
Well, definitely separating money. If you give your congregants, and I think you should, the ability to designate funds, saying, I'm donating such and such a money. Say this person donates $5,000 and I want it to go to the building fund. Well, they need to have the assurance that that's what it's going to be spent for, put on the building fund. We've had, even in our short time as a church plant, we've had designated money that's been given to our church. Hey, I want you to spend this to get a drum set. And we buy a drum set. But designated funds, even as a group, is a good idea, really for any organization, but especially a church. If you're going to say, and we do have one, even though we don't talk about it much, we do have a building fund at our church, and being able to designate where your money goes is good. Now, we normally recommend that people, if they're just giving their tithes, that they give it as a gift, really to go to general, whatever needs to be done. If you want to designate extra and to put towards something,
Yeah. So this, correct me if I'm wrong, the way it, just so people better understand, when you give a tithe, and I'm sure, plenty of, I don't know, I imagine it's not the same across all churches and all denominations, but generally speaking, you give a tithe and then some type of board sort of decides where to allocate the funds, right?
Or you have, it depends on your church structure. You may have a certain committee that's over a certain portion of money, or you may have a board. We're governed by a board, and many churches are governed this way, and the board determines, and sometimes they consult out, depending on how large the organization is. We also had, and this is something that a lot of churches do, and I think it's smart. We do at our church now, and we're just a smaller plant right now. Whoever handles our money's outside the church, so they're not involved with the actual interactions and things that goes on at the church. That way, there's a separation there.
Yeah.
Between your person that's actually over the money and those who are attending the church.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a healthy situation to have a separation there.
Yeah, I can see that, because I guess if you have one of your own members managing the money, they might potentially have too much sway.
Sure.
That makes
There's some
sense.
safeguards is that you put in as well. This is not something that would have been an issue, honestly, when I was a child. But now the situations that we're in nowadays, you have to have safeguards in uh, up to a certain amount. Pastor has sole discretion over, say, I'm just going to throw an arbitrary figure out. If you're going to be a church and you want to say, hey, the pastor can't spend more than,
No, you're good.
pastor can't spend more than $500 without board approval. That means he can spend up to $500. There's not a limit on those transactions, but he can spend up to $500 without getting board approval.
Mhm.
Okay. That's a safeguard that in a hypothetical, utopia, you don't have to worry about.
Yeah.
Pastor's always going to be honest. He's always going to do what's right. He's not going to spend money on himself that he shouldn't spend. He's not going to, but we live in a world now where you have to have safeguards.
Mhm.
And also, especially the church that I came from, we had, even though the board could approve larger purchases over a certain amount, you had to have 2 signatures. So that way 2 board members had to be involved in making larger purchases over a certain amount. That's just safeguards that you put in place. So not only did the church secretary have to sign it over a certain amount, 2 board members had to sign it. So you had 3 people involved over a certain amount. There's certain things that are just good idea these days.
Yeah.
To,
no, I mean,
to put in place.
Checks and balances, I think, generally speaking, are a good thing. I'd agree.
And not only is it a good idea to protect the money that the church is investing, it's a good idea also for those board members who, for all intents and purposes, I'm sure are above board, but it safeguards them too, because you can say, if somebody questions it and gets all bent out of shape, or the church does, when you say, well, I wasn't the only one. We had a discussion about this. That's why these signatures are here.
Mhm.
So.
Yeah. Speaking of the church that we were talking about a minute ago, and correct me if I'm wrong, I won't say their name still, but they're in.
Oh, trust me. All you got to do is Google it and you'll find out who it is.
Yeah, but they're in, correct me if I'm wrong, North Carolina, right? Isn't that
yes, I believe that's where they're from. Yeah.
And speaking of what we're speaking about right now, as I was looking into said church, I saw, and I'm not going to say, and it's not my place to say probably that pastors can't have some nice things, but I saw where, it looks like this pastor has a, like, I don't know, multi-million-dollar home. It could be 10 million plus, and what I was looking at claimed that that home was funded with money from speaking engagements, things that the pastor had written, and so on. And I guess if that, maybe that's true, and if so, I don't know. What do you have any thoughts on, like?
Well, it's really hard for me to. I'll say it this way: I have personal feelings about certain things, and that's what I'm going to be speaking right now. This is my own personal feelings. You can have whatever thoughts you want about it. I'm not one of these that wants to keep a pastor poor because that keeps him honest. You pay a pastor what he's worth.
Mm-hmm.
You make sure that he's taken care of. Make sure his family's taken care of. You make sure that that he's comfortable, and all he has to worry about is shepherding the church. That's what you do.
Yeah.
If you have a pastor and he's going without the necessities, he's worried about whether or not his lights are going to get turned off, that you're not taking care of your pastor.
Yeah.
Either that, or you have a pastor who's not taking care of his money.
Well, and also, and not to say that you can't have higher expectations for people, but we also can't treat a pastor, or at least in my opinion, we shouldn't treat a pastor more poorly than we treat ourselves.
No.
So like if the congregation has plenty to eat, is earning plenty of money, living in a nice house, then you can't turn around and be like, pastor can't do any of that.
Well, everybody has a role.
Yeah.
Even as our church is no different. The only people who make the decisions besides the board are members of a church. And you have to go through a process of becoming a member. Only members can vote on certain things. If you're just going to our church and you're not a member, you can't vote. You have to be a member. But everybody has a role, and everybody who goes to that church, whether you're a member or not, is responsible biblically for taking care of your pastor. That's what, that's the way it's designed. And just like a pastor having responsibility to be a moral person and shepherd his church the way Christ loves the church is the way he's supposed to shepherd. The members have responsibilities as well. They're supposed to live a moral life, and they're supposed to hold the pastor accountable. That's one of the things that you look for. And I hate to mention this because you and I had a discussion off camera before we started about not running a church like you would a business.
Yeah.
Okay. We're doing separate things. We're not running a church for profit. We're running a church for ministry. But that being said, sometimes you have to have board members and that kind of thing that do run the church like it's a business. Why? Because you're dealing with money. You're dealing with money. You're dealing with responsibilities. Now, that's one of the things you look for also when you go to find board members. Now, I love our pastor, and he's a friend of mine. However, when I put that hat on of a board member, the friendship is not a part of the issue. You have a job to do. And if you don't have board members that can separate those things, they're probably not a good idea to have as a board member.
Yeah.
You have to be able to perform the job, perform the role that you're placed in. It's kind of like being at a job where you have friends outside of work, but at work you're their supervisor. You have to be able to play both roles. You can't play favorites or bad things happen.
Yeah. You have to be able to show some impartiality.
That's right.
That's right.
That's right.
Yeah. And the whole thing about running a church as a business, I agree. Since you're dealing with money, there are certain things that are similar to a business. To me, the folks that say don't run it like a business, well,
it's not with the same goals. You can run it like a business, but it's not with the same goals. We're not looking to, at the end of the year, have a big bottom line where we've made a bunch of money. That's not what the goal of a church is.
Yeah, it's with, like, let's just take a corporation, for example. A corporation's main goal is to, whether they admit it or not, is to enrich the shareholders of the original investors, which means that the bottom line's got to grow quarterly or at least every year, which means they're going to get bigger and bigger. And as businesses get bigger and bigger, they get to a point where they stop innovating and they start looking to see, okay, who can we buy out?
Sure.
And that's, I feel like, becoming increasingly a big problem in the United States.
See, one of the things that we have that is different, and it may be different with some other organizations that are really big, really huge, like, I think that, what's his name? Bezos and, what's the Gates, he has the Gates Foundation, and some of these guys give huge amounts of money, and I applaud that. But most corporations, it's not their goal, and they don't have in their bylaws that they have to spend a certain percentage of money every year toward ministries or towards other organizations outside of their own. We do. We have in our bylaws that we're going to have a certain percentage of money that we spend every year that we either give to other ministries, we give to other churches, we give to needy, we give to, and we do that. Now, my personal goal now, this may be, the wrong fiduciary thing to have in mind. To me, the best thing for a church to do, and again, this is not smart from a business standpoint, but if we could pay all of our bills, take care of our pastor, do everything that we're supposed to do, and at the end of the year, we had zero money. We had given it away. We had used it judiciously however we need to for ministry. I'd be fine with that.
Yeah.
Now, you do that as a business and you're going bankrupt.
Yeah.
They're going to fire you. But
I mean, I don't think that, I wouldn't say that that's the wrong way to run a church. But I also don't feel like it's necessarily wrong to have, like, another thing that I think we were talking about this off camera, the building fund and so on. I think it's okay for a church to have certain other funds for a rainy day, but I also agree that a church should be spending a lot of that money towards good causes. I mean, even though a church may share features with a business, it's ultimately not, it's not supposed to be the same thing, at least in regards of like a corporation.
And see, some of those, I'll modify what I said a minute ago about money being left over or not. It also depends on if a church owes money or not. If they're in debt, if they've built a huge building and say they owe $1 million on it, that's a different story. Then the bottom line changes. You need safeguards, say
deal with it.
That's right. We used to have at the other church I came from, and I'm going to mention figures because you don't know the church, but I came from another church and we had a separate fund of $100,000 that we just kept aside in case of emergency. But we owed money at the time. If you are, let's say, you're talking about, I don't know what it is now, but I'm just going to give a roundabout figure. Say you owed $1 million. Well, you're paying what, $10,000 or close to that a month on a note. If all of a sudden something happened where you weren't bringing in money, you would have to have some put aside to take up that note just, until you got money coming back in again. That's where it's a good idea to have money put aside, for, emergency purposes.
That I don't know if you'll know the answer to this. I know I don't, but it makes me curious. I probably shouldn't be smiling or laughing when I say this, but have you ever heard of a situation where a church owed too much money and all of a sudden the bank was like, "Hey, we gotta take the property"?
I've known of situations where that happened.
Oh wow.
Where they lost it. But I mean,
that's something I feel like you hear about that happening with homes, but you don't hear about that happening with churches.
Well, it's a touchy subject. I've personally known churches that had become dependent on one or two people that were big donors every year. And this is a situation that has happened numerous times. I've known about a couple, but this is I'm gonna lay this scenario out for you. This church decides they want to do a bunch. They got a bunch coming in. And whether they look at it realistically or not, they just see all this money coming in and they see it, well, we're going to do such and such. And they go out and get a big building, not one that they could necessarily easily afford, but they could afford it. And then down the road, they get a couple of years into a note. The person who is very wealthy passes away. Their family doesn't hold the same views that he does, and they take their money elsewhere. Now they're stuck with a huge note and not near the money coming in that they need. And what are they going to do?
Yeah.
And that kind of thing is a real issue, and it happens in a bunch of churches.
Yeah.
Whereas if you have, I apologize, man.
It
Nobody's called me
happens.
all day, all day.
Nah, it happens to me too. I'm lucky it hadn't been happening right now.
But no, you have to look at things realistically from a, and that's where, just like in your individual life, you don't want to overextend yourself. You don't want to say, I can't afford this barely, so I'm going to do it. Well, what happens next month when we get to July and your power bill goes up $200 because you're using more air? Now you can't afford it this month. Now you're behind. Well, see, that's where it takes some thinking to make sure that you can do what you're doing. I like our way of doing business. I say business in quotes at our church, how we are now. It's very comfortable for me to go to church. I'll be honest with you. Sometimes even as a board member, there's a little bit of stress there when you're over a board that goes into debt. There's some pressure there. So
hard church doesn't have any debt.
No. Well, I mean, we don't have a place to have debt yet. But
yeah, well, I mean, that's really and truly, though, in my opinion, what y'all are doing is what really everybody, I mean, not just trying to puff you up here, but to me, that's really what everybody should be doing, because it's not that you can't ever, I'm not going to say you can't ever take on debt, but the world has made it seem very normal to go into dangerous levels of debt, without necessarily understanding how you're going to come out of that.
Sure.
So I think that's the smart approach, is to collect tithes and, fund your different funds and allow God to step in at the right time and show you where you're going to be.
There's a lot of things to consider. The church that I left, it was averaging probably close to 500 on a Sunday. All right. When you have a church that big, you got to have a bigger staff.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So they got to be paid.
Yeah.
And then again, if you build a building, you either pay for it in cash or you go into debt doing that, or you get a note.
Yeah. And what you said a minute ago about the power bill and that sort of thing, what I call that is a variable expense.
Sure.
And I really do not like variable expenses. I do not like expenses that one day it might cost $100 and then, a few months later it might be, like you said, $200. Or it'd be nice if everything would always be predictable, but unfortunately life tends to not work out that way.
And you'd be surprised. Again, I'm not throwing out names or anything, so I can talk about figures. The more buildings you get, the more power boxes you get.
Yeah.
And the more light bulbs you get, and the more air you get. And I'm talking, you would be surprised at the thousands of dollars a month it can cost just in power.
Oh yeah.
To run a building. And
power is only going to, in my opinion, get more expensive.
Sure.
Because ultimately, even though electric utility companies have certain restrictions that maybe some other companies don't have, they still are a business and they need to make a profit and pay their shareholders and so on. So those prices, even if they don't rise as dramatically as some other businesses, they're still going to rise over time.
Sure. That being said, I looked up what you said a second ago. This pastor's net worth is between 55 and 60 million.
Is this North Carolina?
Yes.
Yeah.
And
it's a wealthy pastor.
His home is 16,000 square feet.
Jeez.
Anyway, I won't I won't elaborate anymore right now. However, I'll say this. A 16,000 square foot house is
Large.
and it as it describes it in on the internet there, a mansion.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is. Now, again, I'm not gonna fault a person for doing as well as they can for their family, but when you're called to be the shepherd of a church and you're called to I'm not sure that that is the most judicious use of your money. And again, I'm not going to have to answer for this. He is.
Yeah.
That's between him and God. And I'm not going to cast aspersions on anybody for doing what they think is right. I just question that way of handling things.
Yeah. No, I understand for sure.
And he's not the only one. I'm not just
no.
putting that on him. There's many across the nation that are doing the same thing. He's not even close to the richest.
Yeah. Oh no, I would imagine that. You know, some folks have airports and private jets.
That's right.
So,
and that's just I'm sorry. That's just it really grates against me. There's something that really rubs me the wrong way when you talk about people that handle their business that way.
Yeah. No, I mean I agree, and again, I'm not ever going to be one to say that you can't be doing well and be in some sort of church leadership position, especially pastor, but by their fruits you will know them.
Sure.
You know, that's
well. Let me say it this way. It's and again, if this money is strictly from his own doing, from things that he's done outside the church, that's his business.
yeah.
But again, if you believe as we believe that everything that you have is because God gave it to you, you're going to answer for the way you invested that, or the way you hoarded it, or the way you spent it, whether it was on yourself or you used that money. We're all stewards of whatever God gives us. And if you think that the best thing to do is just to hoard all that for yourself, I'm sorry, you've definitely misunderstood the Bible.
But yeah, I think what I was going to say was, I guess one question we ought to ask ourselves, all of us ought to ask ourselves, is do you want to die? Would you want to die after hoarding 50, 60 million? I guess what you have to ask yourself is, you mentioned judgment. How are you going to be judged if you pass away with this, let's even say $100 million, whatever fortune, knowing that it wasn't properly managed and I don't want to meet Jesus after I'm dead and say, hey, I died while still being worth, 50 million, 60 million, $100 million.
Sure.
That's not a position that I want to be in. And so,
well, I'll put it this way. The average pastor in America has to work a second job. They're bivocational.
Yeah.
To make ends meet. Okay. Now, again, some people do that by choice. They don't want to be a burden on the church, which I applaud. I appreciate that. I think their heart's in the right place. And then you have the flip side of that, where you've got pastors like the one we're talking about, and he probably has people in his congregation that are having their lights turned off, and they're having to be evicted, and they're having to go down to the Salvation Army maybe to get some clothes, and you're living in a mansion and you have a hoard of millions and millions of dollars. But I have a problem with that.
Yeah. In my mind, and again, this is just my opinion, I guess, but you don't want to extort your congregation, but you also don't want to extort your pastor either. I mean,
Sure, I get that.
I think just like in all things, you should be able to find some type of balance
Sure.
there. So there should never be these giant disparities,
Disparity.
disparities, where you have a pastor worth $60 million and then, the whole congregation's dirt poor. I mean, you should never have a situation like that. And again, not saying that a pastor shouldn't be taken care of. It's just that, just like what we're seeing in the United States right now with the wealth gap in general in society, when that wealth gap becomes too large, things tend to go bad.
I'll say this: this person doesn't mention this topic as much as some of the other ones I've heard, but I would have him in the prosperity gospel category.
Mm-hmm.
And those type of people, they just prey on others. And again, I don't think that he, the way he handles his messages is not near as he doesn't mention it and beg as much as some of the others I've seen. But his church as a church model to me is a prosperity type gospel.
Yeah.
For those of us who don't really understand that, can you explain?
You've got pastors that make it their priority to mention if you don't have something, it's because you haven't prayed enough. You haven't trusted God enough. You haven't sowed seeds like you should. And when they mean sowed seeds, they mean give money to them. So if you give to them, you're going to get one day you're going to be wealthy like they are. And it's almost like
not to interrupt you, I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
To me, it also means too, like a pastor saying that only good things are ever going to happen to you.
That's right.
Which any experienced Christian knows without a doubt is certainly not true.
That's right.
Optimism isn't bad, but just like anything else, it can be overdone. We have to be honest with ourselves and with other people in the church.
Sure. I mean, honestly, the Apostle Paul wasn't rich because he didn't trust God enough,
Yeah.
And Peter was killed because he didn't trust God enough.
Yeah, show me in the Bible where it says Jesus hates the poor.
I'll tell you this.
Nowhere. It doesn't
show me where any of Jesus's trusted leaders were even close to wealthy. Show me where Jesus as a human being himself was wealthy.
Yeah.
None of that happened. And they were, for all intents and purposes, the most important people who have ever walked the earth, is those who were the start of the church itself. They were all killed. They were all martyred, except for John. But that's the model that we go by. Jesus sacrificed himself for the church. We're supposed to live as we are a living sacrifice, according to Paul. These people are not living as if they're living sacrifices.
Yeah.
They are not putting themselves ahead of not only their congregants, but the church itself. They're not. I think they are
telling people what they want to hear.
They are absolutely doing that, but they're very good at manipulating people to do what they want to do what they want them to do, and they prey on weaknesses of some people who can't see through those things.
Mm-hmm.
I think about the grandmothers who have family, but they've given their they've given their life savings over to this pastor so he can spread his ministry. This one.
Same with, they do it with universities too.
Oh, sure.
As a matter of fact, I would say universities are probably the most common thing that tends to deceive older people. Or they'll, another popular thing they do with wealthy people is, hey, give us this many millions of dollars and you can get your name on the building.
Yeah, that's right.
That's how just about every building on a campus is probably named, if I'm not mistaken.
Grandma, why'd you write a check to Pastor so-and-so for $60,000? Well, you can't expect him to fly around in that old jet he's got now. It's about to fall apart. He got to get the new one,
Can't be flying coach with all the demons.
That's right. And look that one up too, people. Look that one up.
Yeah. No, but the private jet thing it's one of those things that it's funny, but it's not. Even if you were taking a private jet and going to a different mission site to do something for society, I would even still question that.
Kevin, I'm just going to be honest with you. Those kinds of things, and again, I'm not going to say that I condemn somebody to hell if they've ever ridden in a private jet. However, if you make that a regular practice and that's not necessary, and I believe it certainly is not, because anybody can get to just about any location they want to in the world riding commercial. Okay. Mm-hmm. It is an extreme unnecessary expenditure that you're saying it's worth it because I'm important to get to this location. I know that it's costing thousands and thousands and thousands of extra dollars of God's money to get me there, but it's okay with him because I'm important.
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing you're talking about. And I can't be on board with that.
In my mind, making that jet purchase is just like purchasing a vehicle, except on steroids, because ultimately you're buying something that I don't know what the lifespan of your average private jet would be, but I would imagine it won't last nearly as long as you would like it to.
Sure. So. And you think about this. Now some of these are pilots themselves. Okay. That part I'll grant. However, most of them are not. Guess what you're going to have if you have a private jet?
Maintenance, storage.
On top of, if you want to be able to go somewhere anytime you want to, you're going to have a full-time pilot.
Yeah.
They're not free either.
And fuel, jet
that's
fuel.
Right. That's right.
And then somebody to fuel the plane too.
Sure.
I mean, it piles up on you a lot faster than you would think.
And that's just, Kevin, that's just one thing. And and only really the mega wealthy pastors do that. But you have millions of people that are not being reached with the gospel because you want to ride in luxury. And you somehow have to justify that in your mind. You got to justify that with God.
Yeah.
That he said it was okay that you do that.
Yeah. And that's the thing, justifying things with yourself. Well, they shouldn't. Justifying things with yourself, if we're being honest with ourselves, shouldn't be different than justifying stuff with God. We should be completely in step with God, but because we're human and imperfect, sometimes we're not. But yeah, I would say if you have that fear of the Lord that you're supposed to have, I wouldn't want to walk up to God and try to defend that.
That's right.
That would not be, wouldn't be a pleasant position to be in. But yeah, I think, like you said, I think that there are much better ways that you can steward or manage that as opposed to the private jet thing.
Especially in the church. Now, again, I mentioned being a board member. These are the kind of things that must stay on your mind all the time if you are. Not is this a good idea to do? Is this the best use of the money that people have trusted us with?
Mm-hmm.
They gave it to God and they said, as you as representatives of God are going to determine how we use this money. Those kind of things have to be answered.
Yeah.
And you have to sit and think and pray over these things. Lord, lead us in the right way. We don't want to spend this money the wrong way. Even if we're spending on something good, we want to spend it on what you want us to spend it on.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I agree.
And if that's not your goal, again, you're just going about this the wrong way.
Yeah. I should have looked up the total. That makes me curious what the total number of mega churches like that exist out there are.
Well, what size are you talking about? We can now the way I usually look at them is member.
Yeah, we didn't even mention how many members this particular church had. Wasn't it like 13,000 or
you mean, are you talking about at that single location? Because there's 20 satellites.
They have 20 locations.
Of this church. Yes.
Dang.
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess I'd be curious to let's say, like, what is the total in the main location, and then what is the total across all campuses, I guess.
Let me look at this real quick. I almost called out the name.
I mean, it's probably not a big deal, but
it's probably not.
Pull it up anyways. So.
Yeah.
Let me look here.
If they snap back at us, it is what it is.
That's right.
We're supposed to be accountable to God. So.
Varying attendance numbers are reported, but recent figures suggest in-person weekly attendees is a little over 26,000.
Is that across all campuses or just at that main campus? If that's just at the main one, that's pretty crazy.
Let me see here.
26,000. That's got to be across all.
Yeah, how can you fit that many people in one?
It says they have 20 or 21 locations. Let me see here. All right, I'm searching now just on the main campus. That's across all of the campuses, but and I don't see
just the head one.
I don't see the main one, the number for that. But
I think I looked it up earlier, and this is just my best guess, but I want to say it was between 12 and 15,000 at the main one.
Well, and here's the thing. All of those people, regardless of whether they are at the main campus or not, consider him their pastor. Now, this is over several states, so obviously, if they have their structure set up right, their leadership structure, they have people that are set in place to help take care of these people. Counseling sessions, visiting people in the hospital if they're able to do that. And every church, regardless of your size, should have people that do that.
Mm-hmm.
If you are doing the right thing.
Yeah.
But all these people who pipe him in when they're through with the worship for their message, they consider him their pastor. And that's 26,000 people that you are saying, yes, it's okay that I live my life this way. And not only are you telling them that by living your lifestyle, you're whatever his messages are, whatever he's teaching, he's going to answer for that. We're told that in the Bible, that teachers, preachers, whoever else
held to a higher standard.
Are held to a higher standard, and they will have, the Bible says, a greater judgment.
To me, that's one of those. There are some scary lines in the Bible, and to me, that's one of the scary. One of the, and you should be, people always act like, and I'm not saying you always want to be fearful of everything, but people always act like fear and shame are evil things and bad things. Not if they cause you to be more accountable, they're not.
The Bible says the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom.
Yeah.
And that is, that's not some fly-by-night statement. That's from God saying, hey, look, a healthy fear of me is only shows that you're wise.
Mm-hmm.
That's where wisdom begins, is knowing that I have the power over life or death. And at the end of time, that judgment happens with me. So fear of me is the beginning of wisdom. I mean, that's only truth.
Yeah. And I believe I think it's first in 1 Corinthians 5, but in there somewhere, Paul says that something like the saints will even judge the angels.
That's right. That's
Which
right.
is just goes to show you how seriously these things are taken. Not that I'm not just trying to put angels on some big pedestal, but it just goes to show that our choices, our actions, our accountability is important. And we should always remember that. But yeah, it's hard to pinpoint the exact line as to, I think we've probably talked about this before, at what point it becomes too many people for a congregation, but I guess you have to ask yourself as a church and maybe as a pastor too, is how many people can I handle and potentially have a personal relationship with before it becomes overwhelming?
Well, let's look at this. Just what we were talking about a second ago. If you're talking about day-to-day operations and you have to have this much money to operate, that's one thing. But if you have hundreds of millions of dollars that not only do you not need for operational purposes, you're not looking to do something with that money in the future, as far as like build campuses or whatever. What are you doing with it? Why are we investing it?
Yeah. Now, I mean, if a church had millions set aside and they started building, an orphanage or a foster care system, and they started spending more money on doing stuff like that,
or you had it set aside.
I would applaud that.
That's right. Or you had it set aside because you wanted to pay cash for something instead of going into debt.
Yeah.
That's a different deal. Kevin, I'm just trying to question. Let's say it's a smaller figure. Let's say it's 200 million. What are we setting aside $200 million for?
Yeah, it's like I said, drawing an exact line is difficult, but
you're talking about the kind of money that most people can't even wrap their mind around. Yeah. I know that in the big scheme of things, $200 million is not a whole lot of money when you talk about the national debt or the billionaires now, or
to us it doesn't sound like a lot, but I don't know what the poorest country is right now, but in some instances, some people and some organizations have a net worth like that is higher than the GDP of an entire nation.
Yeah, there's probably countries you could go buy for $200 million.
Yeah.
But
I've seen where you can buy towns, even in the United States.
That's right.
Old towns that are, old Western towns, you can buy the whole town.
But in the big scheme of things, that's a huge amount of money.
Yeah. It is.
I can't even, I tell you what I would love to know. I would love to know just what they're making a year off of those investments.
Yeah.
I mean, that just what they're making off of investments would be enough to probably fund entire denominations a year.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It's like we keep saying, there's a certain point where you get to where you're hoarding and you're just trying to defend your hoarding. And we want to avoid that, obviously.
I would also love to know, of course, and we can do some more digging and some more research. I would also love to know what all they're invested in. If it's businesses and it's organizations that Christians should be involved in.
I was thinking
as well.
I was thinking the same thing. If it's like big tobacco and the military and
hey, you never know.
Yeah. And speaking of which, most people that have a 401k or any type of retirement plan, if you're invested in the S&P 500, which most of them are, a part of that is your military industrial complex, your big defense companies, not to name them, Lockheed Martin or anything. No. Microsoft, Google, Facebook. If you're invested in the S&P 500, you're invested in some of these organizations that some of us would ethically question the morals.
Hey, Kevin, I have talked to people before that would just roll their eyes when you talk about not buying at certain places and that kind of thing as a matter of principle, because like it or not, if I go into a retail store and I give them cash, whether I want to call it that or not, I'm investing in that company. Now, I'm not looking for, all I did was walk out with what I bought with it, but I'm investing in that company. And if they are doing things that are unbiblical, and I know that they are, and they are helping spread information that is contrary to the gospel, I'm participating in that. Whether I want to admit it or not, I'm participating in that. And that's the kind of things we're talking about.
And I had this conversation with myself not that long ago, and I'm not going to name them, about a certain athletic wear company.
Mm-hmm.
I started realizing and seeing headlines of the things that this athletic wear company were doing, and I was like, you know what? At some point, I just decided, hey, not buying another product from this company.
And Kevin, if your conscience is pricked, you're much better off finding something else elsewhere than by look.
And this particular brand is like, I mean, the powerhouse. I mean, this probably will tell people what it is, but they're like the predominant powerhouse in athletic wear. So if you choose to not do business with an organization like that, it's going to sometimes set you back a little bit, or
sure. And here's the thing,
problems.
Kevin, we should be willing as if we're true followers of Christ, we should be willing not only to buy another product to replace it. We should be willing to do without if there is no other product.
Yeah.
If we're doing something that is questionable or unethical, or we're helping somebody else participate in that, we should do without the product rather than have it.
Yeah.
It's not that we can't go buy another one. It's that you should be willing to do without it.
Yeah.
If it's detrimental to the cause of the gospel.
That's one of those truths that is uncomfortable, I think, to a lot of, especially new Christians or people that are coming back into the fold that maybe were lost for a while and became a prodigal and now they're coming back, is the thought of, not only will I have to make sacrifices sometimes and make ethical choices, but like you said, sometimes you just flat out have to do without something entirely.
Sure.
Which is can be difficult, sacrifice is not.
Well, everything that we're talking about today, on top of the other verses we've mentioned, all goes back to that God said you can either serve me or you can serve money.
Mm-hmm.
But because you can't serve both.
Yeah.
And there's a line there that, I'm not going to say that, in a person's everyday life, the temptation is always there. Do I want to make more money? Do I want to do these things spend more time doing that, or do I want to serve God?
Yeah.
There are decisions everybody faces every day for that.
Mm-hmm.
On top of that, the same goes with the church. They can get so big that they start looking at all that money coming in, that bottom line, and then they start serving that instead of what they got into ministry for in the first place. That is to serve God.
Mm-hmm.
And, if there's one thing I've learned being in ministry, money's going to come and go. Your ministry's not going to change until the Lord changes it. Yeah. And you focus on that, not how much money you've got coming in.
Yep. And if you believe in heaven, like we should, and most of us do, the question is, what good is that? And I'm not telling people not to make money or take care of themselves, but ultimately, if you're being a good follower of Christ, you have to ask yourself, what good is that money going to serve you after death? I mean, or, you know, when you go to heaven, obviously you can't take it with you. So that's something that you have to.
That's right. Somebody else
constantly
is going to
remind.
spend that money.
Yeah.
Somebody else is going to
Yeah.
live in that house you liked. Somebody else is going to own the land. Every bit of that goes to someone else.
Yep. Which is all the more reason why the healthy attitude, I think, is, you know, that you refer to it as God's money and not, you know,
And that's
not
why
yours.
the word also tells us to store up treasure in heaven that is not taken away from you.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Nah, I agree. I had some scripture in mind. I'm trying to think of what they were. I think I said Corinthians a little while ago what it said there, but let me see if I can find it in my phone. It had something to do with what we were talking about. Let's see. This is Proverbs. This isn't the one that I was thinking of, but I'll read it off anyway. Proverbs 21, verse 5. The plans of the diligent lead surely to abundance, but everyone who is hasty comes only to poverty. But just to interject real quick on that, the New Testament, you know, tells us that being in poverty doesn't mean that doesn't mean that you're in a bad spot with God. So, you know, being poor doesn't affect your salvation necessarily. It's just this is one of those scriptures suggesting good stewardship. But there were some others. It may take me just a second to find them that I had that I was going to talk about. Shoot.
Well, off the subject, but why don't we tell people about what the software does to our blank spots here?
Oh yeah. Yeah, we'll go ahead and say that if you enjoy the content, like and subscribe. We definitely cannot survive without you, the audience. And we're growing a little bit here and there. But yeah, if you enjoy the content, give us like and subscribe. If you don't, I'm not going to tell you to do that, but just take a moment and do that, please, if you would. And yeah, the software that Chris is referring to that we use on the Divine Economy Production Podcast is called Riverside. And we like Riverside because it enables you to use some AI features. So if you're a content creator, a podcaster like us, or anything of the sort, and you have editing on the back end that you have to do, Riverside has an AI producer feature, which makes these things a little bit easier. Like Jack, I believe our producer likes it because it will it'll cut out unnecessary things and it'll put in titles of different sections. So it'll give us like chapters. And ultimately the thing that I'm sure Jack likes about it the most is saves time. Like how much time would you say that Riverside saves you every time you edit on the back end?
It probably saves me a good hour. Going
Yeah.
through and looking for the shorts would take a long time.
Which is a big deal. Because Jack doesn't only deal with with our podcast, so he's got other responsibilities he has to deal with too. And I don't when I was doing it before Jack was with us, it was taking me 2-3 hours just to do what felt like really basic stuff. So just the time saving is really good. So anyway, I would encourage you, if you're some type of content creator, or you film anything, go check out Riverside. We'll put a link in the description or something like that. But yeah, good program. So highly encourage you to check that out. But yeah, I would highly encourage you to. I mean, if you're reading the Bible for the first time, and Chris, correct me if I'm wrong about this, I would encourage people to maybe read the New Testament first and then go to the Old Testament after that. I wouldn't neglect the I wouldn't neglect the Old Testament, but I would certainly read the New Testament first. But Corinthians is New Testament. Proverbs is Old Testament, isn't it? If I'm not mistaken. So
but there's great wisdom there.
Yeah. Proverbs was King Solomon, right? Who was said to be the wisest man in the world, at least at that time.
I just, the Bible tells us that we're going to give account for every idle word. And that's just our words. We're going to have to give an account for our words, our actions, how we spend our time, how we spend our money that he blessed us with. Again, we live in the richest country in the world if you're American. Most of the world gets by on less than $2 a day. That's the majority of the world. We can't go buy coffee for $2.
Not only can you not buy coffee, in most places you can't even buy a bag or a candy bar or something like that for. I mean, you go to the gas station and you'll see a candy bar will be $4.
That's
$5.
right. Therefore, what does the Bible consider us? Everyone that live here.
Rich.
We're all rich. And the Bible also says that it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of the needle than for a rich man to enter heaven.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that ought to be warning enough for you to know that regardless of what you make, regardless of how little or how much you make here, that you're going to have to give an account for that. In many cases, it's a blessing for you to live with less because less is required of you for that.
Yeah.
And just be careful how you do it. Put God first in everything and you'll come out on top.
Yeah. And that particular verse used to always kind of make me laugh and trouble me at the same time, because if you hear it, you've got one group that believes that it means a sewing needle and another group that believes that it means the side entrance to a city fort castle. But regardless of which one is accurate, and I can't say for sure which one is the accurate meaning, but regardless, that it's illustrating the point that this is a very difficult thing to do, especially if it's the sewing needle. Then not only is it difficult, but it's arguably impossible unless you. This is going to sound really gross. Put a dead camel in a blender and blend them up into complete liquid and put. Now we're thinking like a lawyer, like a psychopath.
That's right.
But yeah, I mean, to me, that's one of the better verses because it shows you just how serious this accountability thing is. So yeah, like I was saying earlier, I don't want to be dead and be standing before God and God saying, well, what was the point in holding on to that $300 million after you passed?
Amen.
I don't want to give an account for that because there is no account for that.
That's right.
Yeah. So even if this is just my opinion, but any of us that do well financially, your goal, I think, if you're a good follower of Christ, should be to die, if not penniless, close to penniless. But just my opinion. I think, or at least I would hope that God would show you a lot more grace if you go down that path. But yeah, just not telling people that they have to be poor, but just a reminder that accountability and good stewardship is very important. But with that being said, I guess we'll close it out for today. So thank y'all for joining us. If you enjoy the content, please like and subscribe. Helps us out a lot. Thanks for joining us. Sorry we missed the past couple weeks. We'll try not to do that again anytime soon, but we are coming up on Christmas, and we plan to be back next week, but we'll see how it goes. But Merry Christmas to you, Happy New Year, and we'll see you next week.